In 2023, Justin Bieber made headlines for his music. However, it wasn't because he was dropping a sick new track. Bieber became one of the many artists over the past few years who have sold the rights to their catalog of songs for a hefty sum of money. In his case, it was sold to Hipgnosis Song Capital for $200 million. It was the latest in this trend, where several artists, most of whom could be considered legacy acts, have sold full or partial rights to their song catalog. The price tags were certainly not cheap for most of them. Bob Dylan sold his catalog for somewhere between $300 million and $400 million, and later his master recordings for another $200 million. Sting sold his, and the Police's, for around $250 million, and Bruce Springsteen sold his catalog for a whopping $500 million. No wonder they call him the boss. That is just a short list, as Neil Diamond, Neil Young, Chrissy Hynde, Stevie Nicks, KT Tunstall, Shakira, Huey Lewis and the News, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and many others have done so over the past few years. It does beg the question that if these catalogs are so valuable, why do away with them? Firstly, let's look at how songwriters earn money from their music. But before that, let me talk to you about today's sponsor, Audible. Audible is a subscription-based service for audiobooks where you can find a wide range of titles from new releases to bestseller classics for you to listen to on any of your devices. For instance, if you are interested in how the music business works, All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald S. Passman is available for a free trial using the link in the description below. The book is considered the industry Bible by the Los Angeles Times, and it goes through everything an artist has to know to make it, from songwriting to dealing with managers and their catalogs. For those that enjoy this type of content and never have listened to audiobooks before, I encourage you to give it a try. I find they are a great thing to listen to while I'm doing other things that don't require my complete focus to keep me entertained. It's free for a month, and you can cancel at any time. Again, use the link on the video description below to claim your free trial and download your first audiobook. Now back to how songwriters earn money from their music. When a song is performed or released, various types of royalties are paid to the songwriters or the publishing company that holds the rights to the songs in question, who will usually give a percentage of that to the songwriters. Firstly, there are mechanical royalties. These are paid to the artists to cover the distribution and reproduction of their music. These are generally paid on a per-unit basis when albums were distributed and sold through physical means like vinyl, cassettes, or CDs. With the advent of streaming services such as Spotify, these are now paid out by these services to the rights holders. Next, there are performance royalties. These are paid for the public performance of their music, whether live or recorded, on stage, on the radio, on television, in film, or in any other medium. Payment is sent to a performing rights organization, which will distribute the appropriate amount of funds to the rights holders. Sync royalties are another way for writers to earn money for their work. These are payments made to artists when their music is included in the soundtrack of a film, a TV show, or used for a commercial, for example. While mechanical and performance royalties are based on set amounts, sync royalties are generally negotiated between the rights holders and those who wish to use them in their production. They also generally include the use of the master recording of the song, which is paid out to those who own these, which may or may not be the artist. More on this later. Finally, there are print royalties that are paid to artists when their songs are written out and sold in music books, tab books, and other such literature. So if there are all these ways to make money off your songs, why sell the catalog in the first place? The argument could be made that with changing musical landscapes, many of these royalties are not paying out as much as they used to. CD sales peaked in 2000 before beginning their decline as MP3s, and later streaming entered the picture. People downloading music for free from services such as LimeWire and Napster gave music fans very little incentive to go to the record store and pay for music. Now, people have entire music libraries available to them through services such as Spotify and Apple Music, all for a low monthly fee, or free, albeit with certain limitations in the case of Spotify's unpaid accounts. Fewer sales of physical mediums mean that mechanical royalties are not being collected as often as they once did. At the same time, royalties earned by streaming have been notoriously low, $0.005 to $0.007 per play, compared to what terrestrial radio pays, around $0.0111 per play. While there is still some money in physical sales, it's a far cry from what it was. In 2000, when CD sales peaked, NSYNC sold 9.44 million copies of their album No Strings Attached, the highest-selling CD that year. 2022's highest-selling CD was Taylor Swift's Midnights with 640,000 copies sold. The vinyl version of the album was also the highest-selling that year, with 945,000 copies sold. The proof is certainly there. At the same time, Midnights became the most streamed album in a single day upon its release, netting over 180 million streams on Spotify on the first day alone, along with several other Spotify streaming records. Another thing to consider is that most artists who sold their catalogs are also active performers. And like with all performers, the years of the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond have been quite unkind to them. Canceled performances due to regional lockdowns also mean lost revenues from ticket sales, merchandise sales, and VIP packages. With royalties taking a hit because of streaming and declining physical sales, many artists counted on touring and performing to make ends meet. Selling catalogs may have been a way to offset lost revenue during that time, ensuring that they would have money to live while the world was essentially closed for business. David Crosby, a singer best known for his work with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and sometimes Young, cited these 2 points as the reasons for him selling his catalog of songs to Iconic Artists Group for an undisclosed sum of money. Crosby addressed this in a tweet when a fan asked him if he was planning on selling, following news of Bob Dylan's sale. "I am selling mine also. I can't work. And streaming stole my record money. I have a family and a mortgage, and I have to take care of them, so it's my only option. I'm sure the others feel the same." For older artists like Crosby, the move does make more sense. As these performers age, many may have decided to cash in their chips to live well during their last years. Where it does seem a bit odd is for an artist like Bieber, who arguably still has many years to go. While the allure of a huge payday is nice, there are drawbacks to these sales for the songwriters, one of which is the lost revenues from their music. Selling catalogs and rights away to others means that you are no longer entitled to collect performance, mechanical, or sync royalties for your songs. While getting a huge sum for your music might seem appealing, it may bring about some regret should one of your songs end up in a movie, TV show, or commercial that does big business. If Bieber's Baby ends up on a TV show today, and that show falls into syndication, a bit of a goldmine for songwriters, he gets nothing. Zip, zilch, nada. If Bieber or any other artist wants to start earning money in sync, performance, and mechanical royalties, they will have to write new songs, retain their share of the publishing rights, and hope that those become bankable hits. The second drawback relates to the first in a way, where the catalog is undervalued and sold for less than it could potentially make in the long term. It's a way to get a large amount of money for what could take years to earn in royalties. But no one knows what the future holds or what could happen in music that could become a revenue generator for songwriters. Justin Timberlake sold his entire catalog of solo and NSYNC material to Hipgnosis in 2022 for $100 million. Reactions to the news on the Shade Room's Instagram account were not all positive, saying that his catalog was worth way more than what he sold it for. While we can't predict what happens, seller's remorse may kick in if after selling his rights away for $100 million, those songs end up earning $200 million or more down the road. On the flip side, this also presents a major risk for the firms that are investing in these catalogs. With such huge price tags, they are banking on the fact that these artists' music will remain profitable for years to come. It's much easier to see this with certain legacy acts. No one could imagine a world where Bob Dylan's music is not being played by someone, somewhere. However, with these songs being subjected to declining royalties from streaming services and small numbers of physical sales, the risk is undeniable. Meanwhile, the artists can benefit from a huge payday and no longer assume the risk of managing their catalogs. These sales also mean more than just a loss of revenue for the artist in potential royalties. It also means a loss of partial or total control of their music, depending on the deal. If someone sells all their rights, They no longer have a say in how their music is used. So, you may be surprised one day to hear a song from an artist who once professed not to sell out, ending up in an ad that seems out of character for the music. Some cases are even worse. You may have an instance where an artist cannot buy back their catalog should they want to. Often, songwriters will end up in publishing deals with larger companies, who would then do the legwork to get their songs out into the world. While this may be helpful, it does mean that the songwriter can't always get partial or even full access to their songs back. There was the famous case of Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. Both artists developed a friendship in the late 70s and collaborated on several songs. McCartney had also told Jackson during this time that investing in song publishing could be a lucrative endeavor for him, ensuring a steady flow of money. At the same time, McCartney was not receiving royalties on the Beatles' catalog for years, thanks in part to the mismanagement of Northern Songs, the publishing company responsible for the Beatles' music. McCartney was in a position to buy back his catalog in 1985, only to find out that it was purchased by Jackson before he could negotiate a deal. The purchase helped fund Jackson's lifestyle until he died in 2009. In 2017, McCartney and Sony ATV reached a deal whereby McCartney regained the publishing rights to his stake in the Beatles' catalog, 47 years after the group packed it in. There is also the case of Taylor Swift, Scooter Braun, and the re-recording of her records. Swift, as one of the primary songwriters of her music, has a stake in the publishing of her songs. What she didn't own were the master recordings of her first 6 albums. This is different from publishing, as she still receives the royalties for the publishing and performing of her music. She does not receive any royalties through the use of the master recordings of her music, including cover art and other intellectual property associated with these. These were owned by her original label, Big Machine Records, which was bought in 2018 and later sold by Scooter Braun, famously known as Justin Bieber's manager. Swift sought to buy back the original master recordings, however. The label refused to do so unless she signed a new contract with them, which included several restrictions. Because Swift owned the publishing of the material, she has the right to deny the use of her songs for anything, especially since it would mean that Big Machine would benefit from her work, since most who want to sync her music would also want to use the master recordings from her albums. To gain complete control, Swift has decided to completely re-record her first 6 records from scratch, to retain ownership of the master recordings of those versions, something she was given as part of her new record deal with Republic Records. Consequently, if someone wants to sync one of her songs, they would have no choice but to use the new versions, allowing her to fully benefit from her work. Braun sold the masters to Shamrock Holdings in 2020, but with many of Swift's fans, not to mention big conglomerates like iHeartRadio pledging to only play the re-recorded versions of her songs, who knows if this original body of work will be able to keep any value down the road. In the end, it's all about risk and reward. This is one facet of show business that often goes unnoticed by the average listener, but can mean the difference between feast and famine for artists. It will be interesting to see what the next deal will be, as several artists look to the next phases of life and career.